Welcome to the Talent Optimization Podcast, the go-to podcast for CEOs and HR professionals wanting to bridge the gap between the strategy and tactical implementation of talent optimization within their organizations. Through interviews, predictive index, and personal experience, your host, Tracy Shirk, helps you discover the facets of talent optimization from both a CEO and HR perspective to truly create the dream team for your organization. Are you ready? Let's get started.
Welcome to Talent Optimization. My name is Tracy Shirk, and with me today is a member of our team, Danielle Diel. Danielle, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Yeah. So today we are talking about how we design the ideal teams inside of our organization, how we truly design our organization so that we are optimizing the people inside the organization. So something fun is we will absolutely be having members of the Elevated Talent Consulting team on the podcast much more regularly. So Danielle, thank you for kicking this off with us. So as we talk about design today, and ensuring that we're executing those key things that we need to meet the business results, we're essentially looking at what is our people strategy and how that people strategy bridges the business strategy to the business results. So Danielle, what's a people strategy?
What is a people strategy? It's looking at the people that are within your organization and that you want to bring into your organization and looking at them from a whole person perspective, from a strategical standpoint, using behavioral assessments, things like that. So we use, obviously the predictive index and using those tools to look at people as more than just their job functions, right? But who they really are.
Right. And what's interesting, so Lattice defines people strategy as the set of practices that determine how you attract, retain, and grow your employees in order to best accomplish your company's mission. So when you look at that people strategy, the key thing about the people strategy is that it is distinctly different from your HR strategy, right? So your HR strategy is all of these tactics, whereas the people strategy is how are we orchestrating this whole thing together? So like if you think about this conductor at the front of the orchestra that's, kind of conducting where things are going versus you must play this note when and here and how, that's a key distinction to this people strategy.
Yes. So I like to think of it if you're using the conductor metaphor, right? The HR strategy is the sheet music, right? That's what we're following to get this in place. But, the people strategy is making sure that you have the appropriate musicians in the right seats to hit those notes.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So with that, we're looking at the function and, where we're at in order to do that. So when we're designing our teams, it's really looking at and ensuring that from an HR perspective, we are on that same page as the executives, right? And so, if you're in an HR function inside your organization, I want you to really think about and ask yourself, do I know what the most important priority is of my CEO, my CFO, and the C-suite are? And am I talking that same language and aligned to it? Because what we so often find is that there's a misalignment between what HR believes needs to happen and what the C-suite believes needs to happen. And those things need to be 100% lockstep together in order to really move those things forward. And so with that, when we talk about this people strategy, what we know is that every business problem is a people problem. And what we've been hearing about over the last, year is we can't find the right people. We can't get the right people to perform. We can't promote the right people. We're losing people. Guess what? Those are all business problems because you're not able to produce the key things, but they're people problems. And how can we do that strategically?
Right. And that piece that you stated about really understanding what the goals are, right, of our higher level of the organizational as a whole is so important. And I think it's so easy, especially because we see so many parts of the organization, to assume that we know and not have those deeper conversations saying, what is our ultimate goal here, right? What does it look like? And how do we align this?
And it's taking the vision, which is where we want to go, the bigger picture, aligning that to the business outcomes, and then taking the people data and saying, hey, how do we bring that vision to reality through data? And guess what? Every single one of you has people data at your fingertips. Sometimes that people data is really hard to kind of get your hands on. And that's why we love predictive index, because we're able to say this specific job needs these specific skill sets and traits to it based on, natural behavioral traits. And guess what? This is what that person has. So we're looking at what does the organization need? What does the job need? And then what does the person need? And we want to match those three things together. So we're matching it together by fit to role. We're matching it together by fit to the team. What does the team need? So for example, as you know, Danielle, you and I are both individuals that are pretty independently driven. Now you have a bit more detail orientation in hitting deadlines on time and not saying they're negotiable than I do.
I do love my rules. Yes.
I know you do. And that's what I love, right? So it's like, if there's things that are really detail oriented, instead of me turning myself into a pretzel, I might say, hey, there's this part of what we need to do. Danielle, can you take this? Because then we're turning up your strengths versus me saying, I need to mitigate my weaknesses.
Yes. Yes. And I mean, it's amazing when you really dig into it and you understand and you learn more about the strengths and weaknesses, or learning opportunities, right, of people on your team. It's like a magic wand. And so often, especially when we're talking about people data, right, we are looking at the turnover. We're looking at what has our hiring rate been? And we can get lost in those numbers and not understand the people part of it. Or if we as HR people understand, okay, this is a people problem, we don't know how to quantify that to bring it to those higher levels and say, this is where we need to focus our efforts. And that's why I really like tools like predictive index and what we're building here, because that gives us the tools to explain better and say, based on this data, right, this is what it's showing us. We need to train more in this. We need to align people to these positions a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you are looking for a case study on this, I had a conversation with Janine Weiner from Blackhawk Bank, and the podcast number is 27. And so what Janine was able to do, and I'll give you a quick cliff notes on this, is their sales teams within their banks were competing with each other internally versus competing with outside banks. So what they did is they designed their teams to be pods versus all individual out for themselves. And what happened was the individuals that were really, really great at making the cold calls and doing the networking things were not great at the follow through and the follow up. So you've got like this in your face kind of way, sales folks that are amazing at that. And then you have the folks that are amazing on the back end at the email and the sales and the text and whatnot. When you pair those together, guess what? You turn both of their strengths up. And so when we can design those teams in that way, we can make some huge traction. Now, I use that in a sales team example. The same thing can be said for project management, right? And I think that here's a really good point to say, so often when we're designing our organizations, we're stuck in, the 1916 organizational chart, and if you think about Brave New Work by Aaron Dignan, he talks so much about designing our teams and what that looks like. And there's a different way that we can really design our teams and really looking at the power of projects. And when we look at the power of projects, every project has a beginning, has a middle, it has an end. We're aligning to that project, we're measuring it, and then we're debriefing that project. So what if we were to look at the individuals in our organization and say, where could you play on a project team?
Right. And it's interesting because with the way that our workplace has evolved, so often it's not just one department working on a project. We're all working interconnectedly on these things anyways. It's just that we don't look at them as formal projects, right? But if we were to formalize it, it's a lot easier to pull in the right people in the right seats on that and drive that project forward even faster. I think of how much of what I have done aligns with, other departments. And usually you're waiting on something from somebody else. You're looking for something for somebody else. And when you can pull it into an actual project, then you can identify, okay, this is our goal, right? These are our checkpoints. This is what each of our roles are and how they align with each other. And it's great because then you're playing to everyone's strengths. It's not always the same people on the same projects. You can, mix it up and you can change it up so that people are energized, right? They're reinvigorated because they get to do different things still within their role, right? And they're getting that excitement. And then you're also building those connections between departments.
Yeah. And I was talking with a colleague earlier, and she will be on the podcast coming up. Her name is Lisa Even. And Lisa had stated we were kind of debriefing a specific situation. And I was chatting about, hey, I was working with a client on a situation where an individual was not happy in the role that he was hired for. And so, as we're brainstorming this and saying, hey, like maybe there's some other things you can do, but you still have to get your core job done. She's like, Tracy, I use this thing and it's called crappy to happy. I'm like, tell me about crappy to happy, right? And she's like, well, here's the deal with crappy to happy. It is even, we all have to do tasks that we feel are crappy. In the situation I was sharing, it was, hey, we're designing all these things and you need to create worksheets and edit a Word document. And he's like, this is crappy work. And I'm going, well, it's really, really important work because it ties directly into, what we're doing as an organization and how we serve our clients. And it's incredibly important, so how do we pair the crappy work with the things that will light us up, that'll allow us to move that forward? So some of this is, hey, you have to do crappy work sometimes, or that you deem crappy. But the other side of this is there's times where someone else on your team is really happy doing that work. And when we can turn up the strengths, we can really, align those things. And another thing I want to share. So Amy Stalker, who's been on our podcast a couple times, and this is episode number 24. One of her quotes was, everybody has strengths and weaknesses. Nobody should be ashamed for their weaknesses. Yet at the same time, we need to align individual strengths with what the specific job needs. And it doesn't mean that you can't move people around. You absolutely can, but you also cannot do it at the cost of getting that project done, especially when that's what you hired them for, right? So this is what we call a fit gap analysis, right? Like where's the amazing fits and where's the gap for the job and then also on the team. So this is how we design that using data to get us our highest level results and our most fulfilled employees.
Yes. And I think that fulfillment is key because, right, one of the buzzwords we've been hearing for years is burnout. And I can always tell on days that I've been spending too much time in things that don't light me up, right? Because by the end of the day,
Danielle, no.
Maybe today, just an example, right? It's totally not based in real life at all. Sarcasm. But right, you can tell at the end of those days because you're wiped out, right? Yeah. You've done the same hours of work that you normally do, but you're like, oh my God, I can't even lift my head, right? Don't make me think about anything else. I'm done. And then I can tell the days that I'm doing things that really align with my energies and really get me going because, I feel energized. I feel excited. I could work for like 15 hours straight and be excited and be happy about it.
Right.
It doesn't even feel like work. And when you're building teams like that, where people can really use their strengths, that's what you're going to get. And you're going to reduce burnout, and even when they do get stuck doing the crappy work, they still have that. It's not like that's going to be there every day, right? They know, okay, this is just this project. This is just this portion of it. Once I get done with this, I have these other things that I can focus on. And by the way, I really hope that Lisa does something with that crappy habit because that is amazing.
Yeah. She definitely does. So with that too,
copyright that.
I think as we design for the future, right? So like we've just given a couple examples of saying like, hey, you know what, you're brought into this role, these 75% is great. So how do we start up leveling the folks inside of our organization for what the future looks like? It could be your organization's growing and you're going to have new positions opening up. It could be that you have a really established organization with some really key structures to move them through it. So with that being said, there is some up leveling of individuals. So how are we designing individuals and designing our leadership in our conversations so that we can ensure that we have the people internally available for the positions as they open? Yes, that could be retirements. Yes, that could be as people leave, but it could also be based on where's the organization going and growing, and do we, meaning our employees, know what winning looks like, that we can, have those really critical accountability conversations.
Right. And a key piece of it in building that culture, right, that allows for that is having those systems in place and making them actual documented systems, right? This is how we share this knowledge, and having somebody document that knowledge. It doesn't have to be in a super formal document, right? But that's what I run into so often is that, yes, we have our SOPs. And even if you have those in place, you don't have a system for that more informal knowledge. So when people are kind of passing the baton, it's falling through the cracks. And sometimes that's the most important thing. Or sometimes you have people that they're not comfortable sharing that tribal knowledge because they don't feel safe, right? They don't trust the organization that they can share that information and, not still feel valuable. There's so many pieces that go into it, but I think really just building those formal systems and really making it a part of everything that you do every day. Well, I'm going to share this with you, right? I think this is really important information for you. Here's some documents to back it up.
Yeah, for sure. And so much of this is how do you bring fun into your team so that your team naturally can connect together? And, for us here at Elevated Talent, like fun is one of our core values, and we have the core products and services that we're offering. Design is one of those. It's a 4-week program. We're going to work with you on how do you design that in your organization by specifically looking at your people strategy, your team strategy, the power of projects, and then designing for the future, right? So those 4 modules into how do you design for your organization, and then using people data in order to do that. But if our team isn't having fun doing it, then we have no business doing it. And, as Danielle said earlier, when I said, hey, was one of those days today where it wasn't fun because you were doing a lot of EEO1 reporting or something like that? She's like, yep. So how do we align our best and our highest selves with the best work that actually lights us up, brings us that joy, and gets us the business results as an organization?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing is having fun with each other in those off moments. That's builds that trust too, right? That's how trust is built in those small moments.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing is, you keep talking about structures, Danielle. And one of those things I challenge anyone listening in is, are all your communications still in one-to-one emails, or do you have Teams or Slack chats that the whole group has access to, where you're getting away from the one-on-one communications and you're bringing it into group communications? Because then that institutional knowledge is there for anyone new that comes onto the team, that they can actually go back through that. And it's not stuck in someone's one-on-one email or one-on-one Teams or Slack chat. And so those are areas where, as we're designing our strategies and as we're designing our teams, what are those systems and how we design that in our organization? I will tell you, not a strength of mine, but there's certain things that are really important with that come into this for individuals to be incredibly up-leveled and to bring on new staff or new team members in a way that they can get in and kind of hit the ground running.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's what's so great about having, that team dynamic, right? And those project teams too, because you get that interaction and that sometimes you'll get knowledge from somebody that you never thought that they would have an understanding of that. And they say something that really hits it for you. And it makes you realize, knowledge is everywhere in our organizations,
Yeah, for sure. So, and I'm going to quote this, and this is from the same Lattice article, and we'll put the Lattice article in the show notes. But one of the things that I love here is this distinction between a people strategy versus an HR strategy, right? So when we kind of cycle this back around, and I just want you to think about this. If you say, yes, I have a people strategy, I'm raising my hand to that. Here's how they define the people strategy: enabling employee growth, improving the employee experience, establishing a feedback culture, nurturing respectful communication, fostering diversity, equity, and inclusion, and responding to workforce needs. That's your people strategy, right? Versus an HR strategy is the recruiting. It's building onboarding and payroll processes. It's managing employee databases. You can hear the distinction here is we've got tasks versus the overall strategy. Yes, the HR strategy is incredibly important. It must be built into that people strategy, but they're two different things that are going to be running in tandem. And if you want a really good HR strategy, we build a lot of that into our Hire program, which is our 6-month program that really goes through how you build an HR department from the ground up.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, Danielle, I'm super curious. What's a key takeaway that you have for our executives listening in today?
I think that one of the key takeaways from this is that designing a successful team is so important for our organizations and the health of them as a whole. But one of the most important elements of designing a successful team is building that trust and that sharing into your culture as an organization. And really it starts from the top and just making people feel comfortable with who they are and, comfortable to bring their authentic selves into the workplace and, building that trust.
Absolutely. And one caveat that I just want to add to that is when you do that with a high level of accountability and what winning looks like, it elevates everyone on the team.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I think that takes us into what's our key takeaway for our HR, professionals listening in today. And it's aligning those HR strategies with the people strategy, kind of with that business strategy to get to those business results and understanding what those things are.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So if you are curious and interested in our design program and, how you design that for your organization, we will have that information in the show notes. Our design program, it's a 4-week training program where we will have a couple implementation calls with our team, specifically Danielle and myself, and we would love to get to know you and get to know a little bit more about how your team is designing and how we can support that so that every individual is fulfilled in the work that they're doing while meeting their business outcomes. So with that, I hope you all have a great rest of your week.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Talent Optimization Podcast. You'll find more tools and resources for CEOs and HR professionals looking to bridge the strategies versus implementation gap of talent optimization at elevatedtalentconsulting.com. We've also created a free, valuable resource for you to begin bridging the gap called the Talent Optimization Foundation Membership Program. You can access it for free at elevatedtalentconsulting.com/foundation. Be sure to tune in next week for another episode to learn more about talent optimization and creating a dream team for your organization.